Welcome back to Business Talk Radio. Jill Nicolini here, joined once again by Dr. Harry J. Aponte. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much, Jill.
Please give us the pleasure and honor of introducing yourself since you know you best.
Okay, I'm in Philadelphia. I am a psychotherapist. I specialize in family therapy and working with families and working with couples. Puerto Rican, originally from New York, born and raised there.
Great. Awesome. And you work with clients, obviously, well, you're based out of Philadelphia, but you work with people kind of everywhere in Pennsylvania. And you also do virtual work with people now all over the world?
Yes.
Good. You're a busy man. We've had some great conversations in the past. And what was it today that you'd like to enlighten our listeners with as far as your show today?
Well, I don't know who was watching our last show, but I thought it was a pretty emotional show.
Yeah, sure was.
It touched all of us, and I thought we could talk a little bit more about it in retrospect.
Okay.
Because you had your own reactions to it, and I did mine also. So I thought that that might be of some help to those who watched it, to give them a chance to sort of process what is it that we went through? Why was it so emotional? Why was it so significant?
Well, I think all of us, we have our own issues, our own pain, our own childhood, our own story. So I think bringing that up, I mean, brought me to be emotional about my childhood, as well as you and as well as our guest, the other therapist. What was her name? Is it Marie?
Melissa
Melissa,
Kai.
sorry. Good. Yeah. I mean, and as a therapist, we should explain to everyone what happened last week for those that weren't watching. But she was talking about her own personal struggle with dealing with her clients, and some clients in particular that stay in relationships when they know they're not right for them, when they know things aren't going well. And it pains her as a therapist because she reflected upon when she was younger about her mom staying in a relationship like this. So I'm assuming that's a common thought, common feeling. It's okay to have those feelings. Maybe you should kind of digress into that area, but it's normal for us to feel that way, right?
Yeah, these kinds of experiences uh, can have an impact in our own lives. We all have something in our lives that has left us with some sort of wound that once touched can start bleeding again emotionally. And I think that's what happened. I think that Melissa was talking about the cases. She was talking about her patients, and she spoke about two of them, both of them who were in relationships that were painful, that were not good for them. And Melissa was trying to help each of these women to let go of those relationships. And she was successful with one and was not successful with the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked her about uh, what of their stories touched her personally
Mm-hmm.
as she was engaged with them. And that's when she came up with talking about her mother and uh, getting involved with, having another relationship with a stepfather for her, and it was not a healthy thing. It was a painful thing for her. And I think what happened was that when Melissa began to talk about it, she recalled it, and it opened up an old wound. The scab came off at that point. And so she became rather emotional. And then that can be infectious, as I
Yep.
think you experienced.
Absolutely. Then it brought up my own feelings, my own childhood, my parents, my mom staying. It was just very, very emotional. Absolutely. So I think I mean, it is what it is. And she said she got her own help and therapy over the years. I did when I was younger, but not much as an adult, but it still hurts, it's still here. And it's something that never, I don't think, will go away. So what do? You just learn to accept, deal with it, and try to make better choices and decisions going forward, maybe in the next generation with your own children, right? making sure that you're a good example, and that you're with someone that your kids can respect, and your kids are not seeing those, things, horrible things of people fighting. And that's what I think I do for my kids now. So I'm trying to give them the childhood that I didn't have. And I think we all do that. Doesn't mean it's going to be right. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect without flaws, but you learn from it. And it's always in my mind, always in my head. And I say, wow, I don't want that for my children. I want this. Again, doesn't mean I'm going to get that, but I will try different techniques than what my parents did, and not arguing in front of my kids. I try. Doesn't mean I don't mess up sometimes.
Well, we're human. And as I'm listening to you, I'm applauding you and the rest of us who have had some kind of traumatic-like experience with our families as we were growing up.
Yeah.
Something that affected us deeply and very often wounded us emotionally. The challenge is that for some of us, we allow that experience to then dominate the rest of our lives. And we can then live out the destructive effects of it and carry them into other generations, with our own kids, with our own marriages, with our own relationships. And then there are those, as in what you just described, who said, no, I'm not going to let this thing not only ruin my life, but I'm certainly not going to let it ruin the lives of my family, my marriage, my children, and I'm going to try to do better. That's the fallacy that some people have is that, I'll just bury it.
Yeah.
I'll forget it. I don't want to deal with it. And the problem with that is that when it's out of mind, it doesn't mean it's out of our psyche. What it means is that if we don't remember, if we don't think about it, if we're not conscious of how it affected us, we're in a very poor position to change our behavior. We're in a poor position to do better because we don't want to remember what happened. And so we can get into some pretty bad habits and say, oh, that's natural. That's just who I am. And rather than saying, this is something that I'm not happy about, and this is why it happened. And so I'm going to I want to fight this thing. I want to struggle with it. I'm going to get help, whatever kind of help I can get in order to deal with this. And I think one of the things that you just said that I think is so important is that the earlier these wounds appear, the longer they stay with us. And many of them just stay with us for the rest of our lives. They're there, So there may be a scab there, and we may not be living in accord with the effects of that bad experience, but we can take it as this is a defeat, this is my destiny, or we can say this is a challenge for me. This is something that I want to be aware of, I want to confront, I want to get whatever help I can get to deal with it. But this is going to be something that's going to help me to become a better person and help me to become a better spouse, a better parent. And so I'm going to work at this. And so we take it on as a call to put all of what we have in us to better our lives because of what happened to us. And so we can end up being a little stronger and a little wiser because of the experiences that we had, like having a broken bone. And then once it heals, it may be stronger than it was before it was broken.
Mm-hmm. I know. I feel the same exact way. That scab, but that open wound though does get opened a lot. I think. I don't know if everyone goes through something, but it makes you who you are. Is there any way to ever really heal something fully, or is that scab always going to be there and risk coming off?
I think it has to do with how deeply it affected us.
Yeah.
And some of these wounds, especially the ones that happened to us when we're very, very young, they will never, they can scab over. In fact, they can also push us to improve ourselves and to stretch ourselves beyond what we would have done otherwise. But the vulnerability is still there.
Yeah. Well, it's not funny. It's just ironic because there's a lot of things, I would think that when you're a child, and I don't know the statistics, I don't know if you've said this before, someone told me, but up until a certain age is when your brain develops, right? Don't
Yeah.
you learn by what age do you learn by make all your conscious decisions, you make all of your judgments, can you just go over that with us a little bit? What happens in the brain of a child and at what age do you really absorb everything until?
Well, the younger you are, the fewer uh, defenses you have. The impacts of what happens in your environment, whether it's your family or just your poverty, any kind of trauma that takes place, uh, that you have very little protection, emotional protection, and you're also in the process in those early years of forming yourself, whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. It's happening. It's like a twig that's going to eventually become a tree. If early on there are heavy winds and that little fig happens to be on a hill someplace and they gets battered by the wind, well, you're going to probably have a tree that's never stands up quite straight.
Yeah.
And no matter what you do, it's going to be what it was back when it was just early on in its beginning stages of life. So then by the time we get into our 20s, at that point, we have all of our um, uh, personal resources, biological resources, pretty well formed. And at that point, then whatever happened before there is there. It's in the chest, you know, uh, and it's then a matter of saying, can I be honest with myself? Can I just face, okay, I have a problem with this. I have a problem. Genetically, I have a problem with addiction, and I may be a person who really can't drink.
Mm-hmm.
My father drank and my grandfather drank, and I have a inclination to do the same thing, and that's probably an inclination that I will never be able to shake.
Yeah.
So there's certain things that we simply inherit, like shyness is something that's inherited. In terms of our biology, we can inherit a propensity to be depressed. If there's a trauma, that trauma can so early on, that trauma can so scar us, so that I've talked with women who were raped when they were very young, and from then on, sex is never the same. There's a certain fear. There's a certain need to protect herself. She's not as relaxed about the sexual experience as she would have been if she'd not been assaulted in some awful sort of way. So there are many things that can affect us in our early childhood that then contribute to forming our character and contribute to forming the things that we struggle with in life. My hope is always is that people will realize you're never alone, that there's everybody else on the planet has gone through something.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else on the planet has some, they have gifts and strengths, but they also have vulnerabilities. And if we can accept that, then we can then get into the state of mind that you described for yourself that said, all right, I know this is what I went through. I'm not going to replicate this with my kids. I may not be able to do it as well as somebody else who never went through any of this, but I'm going to put my heart and soul into being a better parent and a more caring parent, you know. Um, and sometimes when it really works well, we'll be better than we would have been had we not gone through that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I often talk to my students about some of these early experiences, but years ago, I really don't remember what years they were, but I'm thinking back in the 30s. Okay, this is just a guess. There was a psychiatrist who was hired by some nuns who took care of orphans, and they hired this person because a lot of their infants were dying, you know, and these were Catholic nuns who were, you know, scrupulous. They would wash the kids, feed them, everything is clean, everything is done by the clock, so we don't forget anything. And these babies were dying.
Hmm.
And this guy spends some time trying to figure out, you know, what can they, what is it that these nuns are possibly doing that is causing these kids to die? Because I see how conscientious they are, how thoughtful they are, how caring they are. And I don't know how he came upon it by accident, but he began to hold these kids, these babies, and talk to them, and touch them, and cradle them. They didn't die. And the nuns had nobody had said this to them at that time. There was, you know, you don't want to spoil the babies, and this is what they had learned, and so they didn't want to spoil the kids, and so they did everything the kids needed, except play with them, talk to them, you know, hold them close to their bodies so they can feel the warmth of a parent figure, and they thrived.
Wow.
You know, I mean, that says something about human nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how we can die from the lack of love.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and so these things have a profound effect on who we are and how our lives are formed. And you know, I look forward to people being able to face this and say, all right, I have these weaknesses, these tendencies, these struggles. I'm like everybody else. I'm not a freak. And some people think I'm just a freak. There's something really very wrong with me. And all these other people, they're okay. I'm just so bad myself. And there are no exceptions. We all have something that we have to struggle with. The advantage of that is that if I can see it, if I can be honest with myself about it, if I will listen to the people who love me, who are close to me, when they say to me, gee, that hurt. You know, I really wish you would spend more time with me, or whatever it is that they get, the feedback that they're giving us, if we would take it as, this is a mirror, and this is an opportunity that says, take control, work at it, struggle with it, fight it, don't give up, don't give up. Never give up hope.
Yeah.
Always keep on trying. And then one of the things that is so difficult for so many of us is to be able to say, I need help. You know, so many of us, if we need help, our pride gets in the way. You know, I don't want anybody trying to control me. And so I'm going to do it myself. And sometimes we can't.
Yeah.
And it is at those times that we can accept the reality of, this is humanity. We're meant to be there for one another. So let me see who can help me, whether it's a therapist or it's even a rehab, you know, or it's even your church, whatever it may be, you know, let even a spouse, who's what wants to help, but what I'll take care of it myself. I'm the big man, I'm supposed to be strong,
Mhm.
and then I just keep falling on my face and failing. And then I get discouraged and then I go into despair. And that's the saddest story of all.
Oh gosh. Yeah, it is hard to accept help, I think, for myself personally as well. Yeah, and I know a lot of people like that too. I'll do it myself. I can do it, but there's really genuine people out there that enjoy helping people and, friends and family. And I have one friend who's an attorney who's just him and his wife. She's from Ukraine. They have a son who's now 16, but like total genius, piano player, like violinist. He does everything. But they've gone through the experience of raising a boy, and they're like, "Oh, I'll help you anytime. What do you need? I'll come over. What do, am I? But how do you have time to help me? You're working. No, it's okay. I could do it. I'm gonna come over. And I'm just flabbergasted that they have such this desire to want to help me, and I'm like, but you have your own kids and your family, and just it's so sweet. And when I think about them, like now, I just get so happy because they exuberate this like aura. It's just so wonderfully helpful, sweet, like, and not everybody has that. So people like that, not going to use the words take advantage of them, but they want you to, they want to really help you. So it's really nice. I have someone like that in my life that always offers to help. And even though a lot of times I say no, 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 sometimes I say yes. And it's a good thing. It's good because it gives them the joy to help. And it's nice that some people thrive on that and need that. And why not? And yeah, so sometimes it's don't say no, 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 no. I tell myself that all the time, but yeah.
Yeah, love is a healer. And if we can accept the love of the people who care about us, sometimes just somebody who will listen to what we're struggling with can make all the difference in the world. Who would think that just holding a baby and cooing to that child would keep that child alive?
Yeah. That is an amazing story. It's true. Wow. Wow. Yeah. And they say that, when you're born, the whole thing, the mother to baby, the touch, you have to keep the baby on you, has to feel the love, the warmth. And then think about that the kids that are in orphanages, they don't have that. No. Oh, it's a sad story, but it's a good story. And teaches us to be more compassionate and loving and more hands-on in a sense. Yeah.
We're so proud of what we can do by ourselves that we put it into an either or kind of situation. Either I'm clingy or I'm totally, independent.
Yeah.
And that's not the real world. Yes, I have to take ownership and responsibility for myself, but I really can't do life by myself. I have to do life with people around me who will show some concern and caring and love and be there to support me and give me a chance to give to them too.
Now, I'm sure you deal with people who come in, though, sometimes that don't have that support, don't have that love around them. What do you suggest to them?
Well, uh, there fortunately there are organizations that do things. Uh, I have one particular patient, and he's shy as can be. He's in his 20s, went to college and all of that. No friends whatsoever. Never went on a date in his life, and became addicted to porn.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have to deal with real people. And we finally got him to think about how destructive that was to him. And then he said, "Oh, these people have this meetup thing, and they then get together around common interests. And there's somebody who organizes this thing, and you can just look it up on the internet." And so he started to do that. Well, now he's bike riding with certain people. He's meeting other people for other kinds of reasons. And it's a kind of community of people who don't have anybody,
Mm-hmm.
but this exists.
Yeah.
And it's just like what we talked about when it comes to the children. This is not a small matter. We really do need one another.
Yeah.
And some of us who've been through very difficult childhoods and we had to struggle to make it, to survive on our own. It can be hard for us to let our guard down and let other people in, but that is a nourishment that we as human beings really all need.
Yeah. Wow. And at this time, just want to point out, I think social media is a good thing for that. Helps people not feel so alone. Other reasons, I don't like social media, but that can help someone definitely who's, more alone, isolated, looking for people, same interests. So I'll give it credit where credit's due. So also at this time, we have to wrap up our show. Would you mind just giving us the best form of contact for you?
HarryJAponte.com.
Great. And again, we thank you for your thoughts, your opinions, and always a pleasure speaking with you. And we'll be back later with more Harry Aponte, I hope, right? On Business Talk Radio.
I, I sure hope so.
All right, great.
Bye-bye.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Everyone else, stay tuned.